Hello, and thank you for joining us on the podcast that discusses all things gaming. Coming to you from the home of BillCon and the garage gaming capital of the world. Live from Osgood, Indiana, this is The Established Facts.
Hello, and welcome to The Established Facts. We are live from BillCon for a very special show this evening.
BillCon?
Yeah, BillCon. Do you know
I know what it is, but the listeners probably don't.
I was getting there.
Yeah.
But
Sure.
it is a very localized, small con of a group of gamers that get together out in Osgood, Indiana. If you don't know where that is, neither does anyone else.
As a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure we're not sure where we are at the moment.
I'm pretty sure we're stationed on Crystal Lake.
Sure. Yeah,
But-
it's right there.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, because visuals are always good on the radio.
out the back window.
Yeah.
I
But-
think we should start releasing maps for people
Oh, yeah.
to locate, things like
Sure.
But like I said, we have a very special show lined up for you. If we can obviously make it through it, it's going to be a very interesting show. I'm going to let the very small, exclusive panel introduce themselves, starting with my left.
This is Big Don.
This is Josh, and I love my wife.
Is that really necessary?
If you knew my wife, oh, wait, you do? Then you already know the answer.
Yeah, but I love my wife too, but I don't have to make public declarations like that.
Public declarations make things special. Totally just made that up. We'll just go ahead and continue on with the podcast now, okay?
Okay. Deb, Josh loves you. Anyway. So in the show tonight, we're going to talk about the villain tournament that's coming up. Guys, I'm pretty excited about that. We are going to rock through this bracket, kind of break it down for you, and show you what you have coming up. And Donna, correct me if I'm wrong, but the winner of the villainy tournament is going to face the winner of the
Video game
madness that we had, right?
That is correct.
And could you explain to the listeners as to who exactly won that?
Actually, begrudgingly, the winner of the Video Game Madness tournament was one Mario.
I almost wonder if we just do that to prod him on purpose.
Every time.
Okay.
So, we're going to break down the bracket for you. Donald, I'm going to put you in charge of the West bracket, if that's okay with you. Josh, I'm going to put you in charge of the East. And we're just going to kind of...
East Coast?
Yeah, right.
Was that bad?
Wow.
All that means is you wake up earlier and you go to bed first.
True.
So anyway, we're just going to ask some real simple questions, and I'm going to kind of get your guys' opinion on how your bracket looks, kind of the highlight matches, maybe some underdogs, and just overall the strength of your bracket. Donald, why don't you go ahead and just give me a real quick rundown of who's standing in the West bracket.
All right. Well, in the West bracket, we have in our matchups. Well, I can just give you a rundown of all the people, and
Yeah, just give me the blanket, like who's in the bracket.
okay. So we've got Darth Vader, obviously a great choice. M. Bison from Street Fighter, Poison Ivy and Harlequin from Batman, Lolth from Dungeons and Dragons, The Forgotten Realms, things like that. Scorpion from Mortal Kombat, Sauron from Lord of the Rings, Ra's al Ghul, also from Batman, Magneto from, obviously, the X-Men, Sephiroth from Final Fantasy VII, Bowser, the Riddler, Doctor Doom, Nemesis from Resident Evil, Joker, and Bane, also from the Batman series. So lots of Batman villains in this
It
West
sounds
bracket.
like Gotham City is riddled on the West bracket.
Yeah, right?
Even though Gotham City is correct me, Josh, but Gotham City is formed after Chicago, right?
I've heard Chicago and New York for both. Metropolis is more New York, but Chicago tends to be the Gotham.
So relatively
realm.
East Coast cities. Funny how
Yeah.
all the Batman seeds end up in the West Coast.
Well, they're all running away.
They're just trying to take over, is what it is.
Maybe. Josh, why don't you give me the highlights of the East Coast and who's all standing there?
Well, over in the East Coast, it looks like Emperor Palpatine has topped the bracket on this side, and he will be facing off against Catwoman from the Batman universe.
She's just lost.
You're going to have to correct me on who is Ganondorf.
Ganondorf is actually the chief villain in the Zelda series. Ocarina of Time is when he makes his first initial appearance, I believe.
I have not played any of the Zelda games. So
Well,
I know
they
it's a
are
fail on
they
my
are very
part.
good.
He will be facing off against Strahd von Zarovich from the Ravenloft. Lord Saruman from Lord of the Rings will be facing off against the evil Lex Luthor. The Dark Phoenix from X-Men will be facing off against Red Skull from Captain America. Dracula from, of course, many histories of many books written and so forth, and from the Castlevania series. Will be going up against Artemis Entreri from the Drizzt series. Lord Voldemort will be taking on Jafar from Aladdin. So Voldemort from the Harry Potter series versus Jafar. Really looking forward to that one. Lord Soth, again from the Dungeons & Dragons, versus Dr. Wily from Mega Man. Which I'm sure Derek would be glad to see that they are making an appearance of some sort. But he won't be here to be messing with the bracket this year.
Yeah.
And then Diablo from Diablo will be taking on Kefka Palooza from Kefka
Fantasy.
Palazzo? I don't know, I must have spelled it wrong. I'll
From
fix
Final
it.
Fantasy VI.
Ah, there we go. So, very interesting brackets thus far.
Awesome. We're just going to start over here on the West Coast. Donald, just perusing down through your bracket, from what I can see here, I'm really interested in what you have as your standout match for the season here. Why don't you just give me a quick kind of keys to success for your standout match, for your favorite match?
Well, I would have to say, in general, I've got a lot of... I think there's some great villains. There's 32 really good villains in this tournament in general. However, I feel like we have probably the best villains on the West side.
West Side?
West Side!
It's going to turn into a West and East.
Well, it is, yes.
No rappers will be shot in the recording of this podcast.
None, because there aren't any on the villain tournaments. My favorite and best, I believe, first round matchup is going to be between Magneto from the X-Men and Marvel Universe against Sephiroth from Final Fantasy VII. I just feel like with Magneto's, of course, everyone has the right to vote how they choose. I intend to vote based on combat prowess and special abilities and things like that. I think that Sephiroth is going to have a pretty tough time against Magneto's metal manipulation and things like that. However, the huge advantage that Sephiroth has, I feel like, I think he's the underdog in the match, but I can't remember. I don't have the actual seedings in front of me, but the fact
Magneto
that
is seated at a 4, and Sephiroth is at 29.
I think this definitely has the potential to be a really good Cinderella story because Sephiroth has some pretty amazing powers, similar to those of Cloud Strife, in manipulating materia and the the special abilities that materia and elements like that can give you. Also, in the West bracket, in the first round, I have a really good underdog match between Dr. Doom, who's seeded 12th, and Nemesis from Resident Evil, who's seeded 21st. I think that Nemesis has a very good chance of taking out Dr. Doom based on the way that I vote, face-to-face, mano-a-mano, because Nemesis, if you know anything about him in the Resident Evil series, if you've seen him in, I believe it's the second Resident Evil movie even, he is just a hulking brute who can just take tons and tons and tons of damage. And I just don't think in the long run Dr. Doom is going to be able to hold out against somebody like Nemesis. So those are my picks.
Awesome. Seems like you have, yes, I was looking over your shoulder at the bracket. you just have some really strong matchups right there on the West Coast, and it's going to make for some very interesting, maybe some second round and third round matchups where you could end up with maybe Nemesis versus you could end up with Nemesis versus Darth Vader.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some really good matchups that could possibly come out of all this. Josh, I see you studying hard on your East Coast bracket there. Why don't you break it down for me and give me what matchup do you think that you like the most, and then give me your underdog matchup, like Don gave us.
Well, looking at the statistics that came through earlier and putting these 32 together from the 55 that were out there in the survey, and thank you to the 16 people that went out and filled out the survey.
And I do have to say that was not a very easy survey. I did not even get mine finished in time for the bracket, but I attempted it 3 or 4 or 5 times, and that, you sit down, you're trying to weigh things out. That was pretty intense. So again, thanks for all of you guys that participated.
But what I noticed just right now, just kind of a quick glance, I noticed that the West Coast bracket is full of a lot of melee fighters, and the East Coast is full of a lot of your spellcasters or ranged sneak style people. So thus, in saying that, the one that really kind of stuck out to me is actually Voldemort from Harry Potter is a 14 seed taking on Jafar from Aladdin, a 19 seed, both of which are powerful casters. Of course, Jafar is a genie at one point, but I mean, Lord Voldemort is the name that shall not be spoken. And you're looking at some pretty powerful magical prowess. And again, I try and take a combat approach as well. I won't deny that there are some times that I just don't like somebody, so I'll vote against them. But that one in particular kind of sticks out.
Bitter.
Hey, I'm not going to lie. So, Don, you look like you have a comment. Are you staring at me?
No, I was just
Listening?
intently listening on your synopsis of your breakdown.
Well, thank you. But also in saying that, there was an underdog one, though it may not sound like an underdog when you hear the seeding. Dracula seeded third against Artemis Entreri, seeded number 30. And the reason why I kind of looked at this as an underdog opportunity, we had, of course, Simon Belmont was our out-of-nowhere victor on the West Coast during the Video Game Madness tournament. I'm sorry. And Dracula, of course, was his main nemesis. But we've got Artemis Entreri, who's well known in the gaming world from just talking with Bob Salvatore and other people who've read the series and so forth. Artemis has a following, and I think we may see kind of an upset there against Dracula. Even though I am a big fan of Dracula, I could totally predict an upset from there.
That's awesome. As I look very quickly over the bracket here, we obviously have a very heavy Batman influence, and we have some Spider-Man, some Superman splashed in there. Are there any guys or any villains that we just feel that we just kind of left out? Not that it was left out of the whole vote, but now that I'm looking at the bracket, are there anything that I just feel like do you guys feel like we just kind of missed the boat on anything, or do you feel like we've got a pretty good encompassing realm of trying to handle all of the villains, all
like
of the types of bad guys?
A wide enough array. I think that there is, out of the 32, there are amazing villains in here. There's guys with magical abilities or they have technological abilities, or they use the Force, or different factors that make them really good villains. I think that if I were going to, if there were any villains that I would pick to put into the actual bracket, I think I would have enjoyed to see the Green Ranger from the Power Ranger series. I was a huge fan of Tommy in the Power Ranger series, and I think, again, because I enjoy voting on a basis of combat prowess and special abilities and things like that, I think he's got a huge advantage. And I don't just mean the Dragon Zord, but I mean he's got a huge advantage combat-wise because he's got special abilities, he's got enhanced fighting prowess when he's in his Ranger form, he's got a special sword and dagger and things like that. And I think actually he reminds me a lot of Artemis Entreri in the way that he fights and things like that. So that would be my choice if I saw somebody else on the bracket.
I'm still sad to see Cruella de Vil didn't make it, but that's just a personal hatred towards her.
Well, I'm also sad that I didn't make it on the bracket.
Oh yeah, I was going to mention that.
But deep down in my heart, I know there is satisfaction because I still beat Tom Brady.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah.
We had Mike. Some of you may have noticed it just said Mike on it. I was hoping some of you kind of paid attention to that. Maybe next year we'll put the host and see if it makes a little bit more sense. But Mike got a 38 seed, I believe, is what it was. Mike was at. I do apologize. I'm trying to get the data here. Yes, he was a 39, where Tom Brady sat. No, he were a 38, and Tom Brady was at a 40. So that should make you feel good. It was a whopping two points or whatever. But I will say that Cylon Mega Man from the website, which actually turns out to be my brother-in-law, but made a great effort in giving us a bunch of information, of course, after we put the survey up. So next year, when we do this again, get your information out there, because if we have a whole other pool of 55 that have nothing to do with this 55, we'll put them out there and see what people think. Ozymandias I saw in there, Adolf Hitler. I mean, there were a couple really good suggestions on there, and I hope we get those in for next year. But don't be afraid, to keep the conversations up like we had last year. We're definitely going to focus on the Facebook page. We may open it up to the group just for the voting purposes, because apparently a lot more people paid attention on the group. So we may just open the polling up over there and combine the polls and see what happens. So,
and you can obviously get to the poll from www.theestablishedfacts.com as well. So we've always got stuff on our website too. So. And
I think we may do the Survey Monkey thing again. We're still going to look into that, but you'll know by the time this is up. So
awesome. So. As we move through, guys, I just want to reiterate that I'm excited. I think this is going to be a really neat breakdown, because there's just a lot of villains. When you play a bad guy and when you play a video game, there's always an antagonist. There's always something that is driving the hero to do or accomplish something. Be it Skynet from the Terminator. It might not be a person, but it's still an antagonist, whether it's an entity, an ideal. Anything like that. So as we are moving forward in this villainy tournament, I can't think of anything better to talk about this evening than kind of what we see makes up a good bad guy or a good villain. Like I said, it doesn't have to be a person. It doesn't have to have a physical representation that they are going to fight at the end. It could be an ideal. It could be something that it could just be anything. But we're going to talk about what makes a good villain, some kind of maybe some traits that they should have, stuff like that. And then we're going to go and hand pluck one villain out of the bracket that is in front of us here, and we are going to explain what is their less than endearing qualities that qualifies them to be one of the 32 that are on this bracket. So I think that's going to be super fun. I see the list here in front of us of who we're going to talk about. And, I mean, they're as polar opposite as, Bowser and Emperor Palpatine. But they both made it on the bracket. So Donald, I know being a heavy role player, avid video game and player, stuff like that, what is it in your opinion that makes a good villain? What kind of are the standout traits that you kind of connect to as a player?
Well, actually, I kind of touched on it a little bit in our episode when we talked about creating a campaign, and I said, when I like to create a campaign or a world to play in and run in, I like to focus a lot on the antagonists and on the bad guys, because I feel like the bad guys are what drive your story. I enjoy a villain that has just as much depth and definition as a hero. So when you have guys like Artemis Entreri, when you have guys like Darth Vader, and you get a chance to really see their background unfold and you learn a lot more about them and why they are the way they are, I think that what that does is it makes you realize that there is a human connection to them, but instead of maybe choosing the direction that you might have gone or the direction that the hero went, they went the complete opposite direction, and they decided to go, completely on the other side of the coin. And as a matter of fact, saying that, I immediately think of a really good villain. We probably could have included that, probably would have made it, but Two-Face from the Batman series.
As if we didn't have enough from the Batman series.
Well, right, but when I think about backstory, he's an amazing example. He started off as a lawyer trying to help put bad guys away, and then because of something that happened in one of his trials, not only does it mar his face, but it eventually mars his soul and his heart, and his character just flips. And not only is he Two-Face because of his physical deformity, but he's also he just has this completely different mindset, and he's it reminds me a little bit about, not to jump around too many subjects, but it reminds me of the lawful neutral alignment that we talked about, way back in our beginning days. But just
so long ago,
yeah, just having that mentality where you are constantly calculating what your decision is, and there is a chance that you could do the evil thing, and there's a chance that you could do the good thing, but that depth that continues to build in that villain, I think that's really, for me, that's really what makes a good villain, is just having definition and depth and being able to look inside of kind of their heart and their mind and their soul.
So what I'm grabbing here is, for you, you don't like the villain that you never really actually get around to knowing. It sounds like you kind of like that half personal connection, whether it's you see that there's good in them, or you just know his story. You just don't want him to be that this is just the big bad guy that you have to go fight at the end.
Right, and I think that usually what happens is, in so many stories, you just have a flat antagonist. They're the bad guy. They're the one that you have to stop, and there's no explanation of why they're doing what they're doing. Not saying that what they're doing is right regardless what the reason, but in real life, bad people do bad things for specific reasons, and I mean, unless they're sociopathic, and even then, there could be a reason. There could be some stimulus on why they're choosing to do things the way that they're doing them, and I just feel like that makes for a much more villainous bad guy, to know that they have a little bit more character to them than just being some flat, faceless entity.
So, do you think that it's from what I get from what I'm picking up on? It's if I'm playing a hero, playing in a game. Let's say we're going to connect it to a role playing game, but if I'm playing a hero that is connecting to your bad guy, obviously he's my antagonist. He's doing something I don't like. I'm trying to stop him, or whatever the goal is for the game. But maybe it's the fact that I know that deep down inside, at one point in time, maybe he wasn't that bad guy, or maybe I am experiencing or showing traits that I see in him. Maybe it's those kind of things that really kind of prompts some internal dialogue with yourself about what an external character is doing, much like Two-Face, where he has this internal dialogue with himself. Well, am I going to do the good thing? Am I going to do the bad thing? Of course, he uses the coin to decide what he's doing. Ultimately, a little more chance-driven. But the character development, anyone in Gotham City could see a connection to his character, whether you're a good guy or a bad guy. Because if you're trying to put away crime, bad guys, you'll connect to the district attorney who is locking away the bad guys and trying to save the city, and that's what you'll remember. But obviously, if you're a bad guy, you'll connect to the Two-Face monster who is pretty ruthless and will let life really be a flip of a coin. So, Josh,
it's funny. You make mention to the idea of getting hooked to your bad guy, and I'm completely with you there. But there's two things, and I tried to make it a point in the World's Largest City or the Xenopolis game that I ran to introduce that with Sir Milton Derrick, who sadly did not make it into the tournament, but not everybody knew who he was, and that's fine. Was this idea of utter hatred. Both either the characters have a reason to completely hate this guy for something they've done to the family, and again, it's that tying thing, but for some reason, hatred has always been one of those things that really ties me to a villain. Like, oh my god, I either absolutely love you because I hate you so much, or I love watching the good guys come after you because of that. And in that same notion, I love the idea of the villain being just that much out of reach. And the reason for that is it makes me drive to want to continue going after them. Yeah, even I can admit that there's a time where you're like, can we just kill this guy so we can move on to the next bad guy? And a good game master or a good game developer or whatever will sense that as they're going through the story themselves in their mind and so forth, and should really take advantage of that. But an utter hatred, but he's just that much out of reach, really can drive me to just want to continue going after that in any way, shape, or form. I mean, playing the Uncharted series multiple times, you're going through, it's that Indiana Jones style thing, you're finding clues. Oh, there he is, and you're chasing. There are 2 or 3 big chase scenes in the most recent Uncharted that every time you're like, I'm going to get him, and then at the end of it, he gets away again, and you're like, oh my gosh, I want him dead. So that's why I was always so hooked in that game. I just couldn't stop playing it.
I think there's some inner rage in you, Josh.
Just a little.
Well, all right then. I have to go back and fix that.
Yeah.
No, it's not too bad. Well, probably. But.
Anyway, well, when it comes to me for bad guys, as we're going around the table here, I think the big thing for me is if I'm going to run a bad guy or if I'm going to play against a bad guy, I kind of like them the same. I like my bad guys, as bad as it sounds, I like my bad guys smarter than my heroes.
You like psychological warfare?
No, I like the fact
More
that
calculating.
Yeah, I like the fact that my hero or my villain is not going to be standing in the middle of a town on noon, waiting for the heroes to come attack him. A good villain is not going to put himself in a situation to where he's going to get attacked or he's going to get attacked. Whatever. He's not going to put himself in that situation. For me, I think it's fun trying to outthink a villain than it is for actually, getting to the final battle and smashing him and seeing him lying dead on the floor. I think it's fun to try and outthink him and try and be, okay, he's going to do this, and then he's going to do that, and so we need to do this, and we need to do that to try and kind of corner this bad guy. And it's nice when you have game masters that kind of think 3 or 4 steps ahead, but on the same aspect, it puts you in a very interesting predicament where you can ruin a lot of plot and train wreck a lot of storylines, because if that, obviously that's how I think when I'm playing these games, is I have to figure out what you're going to think and what you're going to do, and then I got to be 2 steps ahead of you. Well, if I'm 2 steps ahead of the villain, that means I'm 2 steps ahead of the game master, and I'm pretty much in uncharted territory at that point. Did you have something, Don?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I feel like, based off of your point, which I really agree with, one thing that's kind of interesting to see, and I just kind of thought about this, is most bad guys are aggressive in their action, but they're never, or very rarely, are they reactionary. Because your bad guys are the ones who are setting up whatever devious plot they are for the good guys. And the good guys obviously don't know what's happening until it happens, and then they have to react. And so in a way, being a villain, not only can you sometimes have a lot more intelligence. I mean, if you look at guys like Norman Osborn or Dr. Octopus, you're looking at guys who have a much higher intellect than the hero themselves, and they're always putting that separation between, okay, this is what I know that their abilities are mentally, these are the problems they have to solve, and I know that even though he may solve this problem, by the time he does, I'm going to be out the door, with the sun at my back, running as fast as I can, so it doesn't matter.
Right. I think it's neat as we're breaking this down. We all play in role-playing games together, Josh, Don, and I, and it's very interesting to see what we see as good bad guys. Because I think ultimately, whether you would like to admit it or not, what you see as a good bad guy reflects on what kind of characters and how your mentality is as you play characters. Because it's not always that Don gets to play a bad guy or Josh gets to play a bad guy. I just recently had the opportunity to run and play all the bad guys for Derek's last game as he ran for the guys. And I will tell you that Derek told me after the game that he felt like those were the most challenging bad guys that his gaming group has encountered. One, I would like to chalk that up to me not being able to play and keep the party alive. But two, just the way I run bad guys. Josh's particular character in the game was a goblin that carried a blunderbuss, and he walked into town and started shooting this blunderbuss at the request of the sheriff, because he thought it was hilarious that this little goblin had this full-size blunderbuss. And one of the bad guys happened to be in the town, made us check to disappear into the crowd and pretty much track and follow Josh. And later in the game, when they were getting ready to go attack the camp that the bad guys were in, the bad guy was still following Josh and heard that they were going to go to the town or go to the camp. And this is all what smart bad guys do. They have recon, they have intelligence, they know what's going on. By the time that the heroes made it to where the bad guys were, they had picked up and crossed this river, and so the heroes were going to have to cross this river to get to them. And ultimately, it ended up to Don's character being riddled with gunshot wounds in the lake or in the river. And it's just the way you progress and the way you think about these things. That if the bad guys are literally one step ahead of the good guys, it usually doesn't turn out that way. In most games, it usually always feels like the good guys are just on the heels of the bad guy and then very quickly kind of surpass him. But I'll tell you, I had the main group of my gaming guys. They were retreating. They were looking for cover and trying to find a way to stay alive. And it was neat. It was neat in my gaming experience to see kind of the mortality of gaming at that.
It's funny you mentioned that because the Postcards folks just did a big thing talking about munchkins and power gamers and whatever phrase you want to call it or whatever. And I will admit, a lot of us are power gamers in some way, shape, or form. And I'll tell you, in that particular game, I was purposely playing a concept character because I want to see what would happen. But then, of course, it turned into these are the bad guys. We got to go get them. We got to deal with it. And I would do crazy stuff like fire a cannon that was loaded with the wrong shot in it and see what I could pull off because it was most entertaining to do. And I didn't mind retreating because you guys gave us an alternative to continue the story along afterwards. But, when you're in the middle of it, you're hanging on for your life. You're on the edge of your seat. Are we actually going to get out of here? That type of thing. And that's the other element that a good villain can bring, keeping you on the edge of your seat.
But here's the thing that I wanted to, and I talked to Derek about this, but I wanted to put forth before you guys that in all of the other games that I've played, in general, not just with Derek, not with just with the DM that we had before with Danielle, but we were never really faced with a challenge that we were really staring down the gun, looking at it, going, "I don't think we're going to live." And that's a very interesting internal dialogue you have to have with yourself as a character. If you really get into your role playing and get into connection with your character, I know Josh was playing this goofy goblin, but he was into exactly what this goblin was doing.
Yes, I was.
Yes, he was. He was thinking just like how this goblin was, and he was doing all the stuff that he was supposed to. And ultimately, at the culmination of the combat, he was ready to run because his party members were getting gunned down, and it was just really neat for me to watch that because as a player, I have never experienced the fear or the what is it that like the
uncertainty,
the facing of your own mortality of these bad guys, not even like the bad guy, but these bad guys who are just smarter, have outsmarted me, could possibly kill me. And that really kind of gives you a reality check, because really those guys aren't even as bad as the bad guy that you're going to face.
And okay, now that we're on the topic of outsmarting, I'm going to go ahead and bring in my villain that we were going to talk about here.
Go for it.
Because I was most interested, and granted, it was partially because as a kid I loved the movie. But even when I played the Sega game, Jafar, who was the bad guy in the original Aladdin video game, he was in the movie, but though anyone watching the movie could obviously tell that Jafar was the bad guy. I mean, it was very clear. Jafar and Iago were manipulating the Sultan the entire movie. But no one else caught on until the last 20 minutes of the movie. And then it's like, oh, so that's what's going on. Or last half hour of the movie, whatever. And that was kind of the definition of outsmarting people. Granted, in some cases he was doing it through his sorcery and through his staff, but in others it was just purely I don't know what you're talking about, playing dumb. And sometimes playing dumb is the fastest way to outsmart a poor boy who's out stealing to get his food, not really paying that much attention to how other people are. So, I mean, for me, maybe that's how Jafar defeats Voldemort. Maybe he just outsmarts Lord Voldemort.
I would have to say that I really agree that there are a lot of precedents out there with villains who are just always that little step ahead of the hero, and that's what really is entertaining about a good villain-hero combination, is just knowing that there's so much passion in this hero to stop this villain, but no matter how hard he tries and no matter how much effort he puts forward, that villain is always just a little bit ahead. It reminds me a little bit of the Sherlock Holmes movies with Professor Moriarty, and how amazing it was to see a villain who was just as smart and just as calculating as Holmes. To be able to see them map out a combat the exact same way on the opposite side of each other. And then to see, just in desperation, Holmes was like, all right, well, if you're expecting me to do this, I'll just do what you don't expect. We'll just both jump off the mountain. So I just thought that was amazing. I chose the deity Lolth from the Forgotten Realms.
She's not a full deity.
She's not.
She's fighting for it now. But
depending on what you're reading. And what you're playing, yes.
Right. It makes it, the only reason I mention that is because if someone is looking at this from a combat perspective, if you say
that's true.
Deity Lolth,
that's true. No, that's a very good point.
You kind of have to pull it. She's not a full deity.
She's not. However, she is, the qualities that she holds are, first of all, she has amazing special abilities with sorcery and minions and followers and familiars and things like that. So she has numbers on her side. But more than anything, what drives her is her sense of vengeance and her sense of retribution. She is always feeling that sense of somebody's trying to get me, so I've got to. And I think that's what a big portion of the mentality that the Drow and the Dark Elves have in Forgotten Realms. The reason why they think that way is because this figure that they worship, this matron that they worship, is just so power hungry and so vengeful that she has taught her people to be the exact same way. And it's just it's hard for you. We were talking about calculating what the bad guy is going to do. It's hard for you to calculate when someone is just vengeful, because they're 9 times out of 10 acting out of passion. They're acting out of just rage, and so they're really hard to calculate, and it's really difficult sometimes to be able to counteract that, because similar to the Joker from Batman, you don't know. I mean, he could blow up a hospital. He could.
But he's not doing it for power.
No, he's
just
not.
doing it
He's
for
just
chaos.
doing it for chaos. But in that, what I mean is unpredictability in your villain is,
one of the most
it is one of the
dangerous
most dangerous weapons that a villain can use. Is just unpredictability. So,
for my villain, I plucked out the Dark Phoenix. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the X-Men series. I was a huge X-Men fan growing up. And the Dark Phoenix, to me, displays a lot of the traits or the qualities, I guess, that would make her a good villain. One, she's smart. She is very, very intelligent. We won't even comment the fact that she has telepathic powers and can read your mind and do all that goofiness because, as just a whole, Jean Grey is intellectually above average. Okay? The big thing for me that kind of drew me to pick her out is the what I call the traitor factor. This is someone that you trust and you confide in, and maybe it was one of the party. And in her case, one of the team, one part of the X-Men. And then turns out to, for quite a long time in the series, to turn out to be this villain, this bad guy. And there's a lot of complexity to that because you have Scott Summers, who is Cyclops, that is in love with her and all this stuff. So you have that pre-existing emotional attachment from the characters that have, worked with her, been on a team with her, friends with her, cared about her. And then just to have her through, whatever you want to call it, possession or awakening of a power that she didn't know she had, whatever, has this 180-degree, literally this mental flip of her mentality and her outlook on life and on everything. It's a really interesting aspect to watch be played out. Don and I got to play out a very similar storyline in the Dalfor game that we played. We played Drow Brothers, Sorcerers, and in the final culmination of the battle, our DM came up to us before the battle started and said, how would you guys like to be kind of taken under control, or I guess relieved of a mental block that you were being controlled by the villain the whole time during the game? So now this has been, at that time, 2 years or 3 years of a game that we have played and been, part of the party and chum buddies with everybody. And then this last battle comes around, and this shadowy figure is standing there with a cradle, and we walk into the room, and literally this shadowy figure says, "Vorn and Belgos, I've been expecting you. Welcome home, my sons." And on that command, literally, the mental block is broken, and Don and I become enemies of the party. I know, Josh. I know you didn't know anything about it.
Not a clue.
But playing in that game, I mean, I as playing the hero turned villain, I know what I experienced. But I can only imagine what you guys experienced, because knowing the capability and the power that Belgos and I had as spellcasters, you literally tipped the scale very rapidly in the hands of the villain, because, my goodness, I've traveled with him for 3 years. I know all about him. I know what his weaknesses are. I know what he's allergic to. I know who his parents are. I know what his family looks like. I know where he lives. I know everything about this party, and now I'm a bad guy. So it really puts your heroes in a really vulnerable situation to where they have to start literally just kind of looking at themselves and looking at everyone else with the magnifying glass. And do I really trust you? Are you really the person you say you are? Or tomorrow are you going to wake up and be an enemy of the state?
See, but I can throw it at you now as a hero on the other side of that. My initial thought was, oh crap, they're super powerful, they're going to come after us. But having been with this group and knowing what you guys were capable of, and knowing what good you were capable of, being that I was playing a monk, a lawful good character, lawful stupid as it may be, my immediate thought was, how are we going to reverse this? Because it obviously could be reversed one way. We've got to figure out how we can put it the other way. So we got to get them knocked out so we can deal with it. And that's some are like, oh my god, I knew this was going to happen one day. Like Dalfor's entire character concept was just like Batman. He's got to be able to defeat everyone in the Justice League, and he had some way to deal with every one of us, including you guys. Not that it was easy, but he had a way to deal with you. Whereas I was wholeheartedly trusting of everybody, and when this happened, I was like, okay, this sucks, but we're gonna deal. We're gonna figure out how to help these guys. So
in that same situation, though, I think that the huge advantage that not only the villain had, but that we had in that situation was very similar to what Mike said. You know, we knew the ins and outs of everyone in the party, and though during the combat we had opportunities to fight off whatever the enchantment was and things like that, it was really interesting and it was really cool to see how your party responds to someone who's been traveling with that party for 3 years. Now, in the game time, it was only about a year and a half, but still, as players, as gamers, as characters, you make a connection, and it took a lot for John's character Dalfor to even trust us, because in the storyline, he did not trust Drow or Dark Elves in any way, shape, or form, and we were both playing Drow sorcerers, and so the fact that we were able to break down that wall of resistance and really show him that we were not the same quintessential Drow that he had grown to know, but then turn around and spin the tables back on him, it was almost as devastating to him as anything could be, because it's worse than unpredictability. It's worse than revenge, and it's just blank deceit. It's
betrayal.
It's betrayal, and that can be. I mean, at that point, it's almost like, why fight? You know what I mean? These were my friends. They know everything about me, and now, I'm face to face with the reality that either I'm going to die in this battle or I'm going to kill people that are my best friends.
Luke, I am your father.
Oh yeah, I totally agree.
The turning point of that movie. But on the other end of it, it also gave Luke something else to go after.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Absolutely.
So it's the
However,
same idea. At the end of that movie, Luke is, oh my god, I don't know what I'm going to do right now.
But I think the big difference in that is not necessarily just the revelation that Darth Vader is Luke's father. Sorry if I'm spoiling anything for you, but it's been, I'm pretty sure, about 40 years. So if you haven't seen Star Wars by this point, you really need to.
Yeah.
But I think that even more, it would be more equal to them getting to the very end of Return of the Jedi and Luke standing in front of Darth Vader and Darth Vader teasing him about how he's going to kill his sister, and then Luke just saying, you know what, you're right, let's do this. I mean, that changes the entire complexity of that movie. Mm-hmm. And your mindset about those characters completely changes. And again, like you said, it's almost like, how do you trust somebody? It's complicated, very complicated, especially because we continued to play those same characters for another 2 to 3 years after that, and it was different. It was very different.
Always a web of distrust in there. That at least someone had. Yes, in this case, mostly Dalfor, but he was untrusting anyways. So,
but yeah, I mean, I hope you guys have kind of enjoyed getting a very kind of intimate look with Josh and Don and I as to we go over this villain tournament with you at BillCon here. But as we wrap up, I just wanted to thank you guys for doing all the hard work of doing the brackets and filling out all that information. I'm excited to see where it goes, and I know these guys are as well. So as we close out here, Don's got one more thing he wants to share with you, and I think Josh has something about the postcards from the dungeon, the time frame changing on that. But Donald, what do you got?
Well, I just wanted to kind of reach out to our listeners. I reached out to Josh and Mike as well, but I'm going to be running a campaign for these two guys and several other friends of ours, and again, a big part of my campaign is the villains. And so I think it would be really fun for myself as a GM to kind of, because as a GM, sometimes you start to run low on ideas or you just start to scrape the bottom of the barrel. And not to say that I'm necessarily there, but I think it would be really intriguing to see what the listener's definition of a good villain is. Now, I'm going to be starting this game on the 3rd of November, but I would love it if you get on our forums through Fear the Boot forums, or if you get onto our website on theestablishedfacts.com. You can get on our fan page on Facebook. You can get on our group page on Facebook. It doesn't matter. You can message me on Facebook. I don't care. But if you have we're playing Pathfinder, so if you have a character concept with a short, detailed but short, concise background or something like that for a really fun idea that you had for a villain, I would love to see what everybody's ideas for what their favorite kind of villain is, and I might even try and use some of those ideas in the game and let you know how the party responded and how it worked out and things like that. So that was really, that's really just me reaching out to you guys and letting you know that I'm interested to see how you feel about this same subject. So,
Josh, why don't you give us the update on the postcards from a dungeon?
Well, from what I understand, there's been a relatively decent showing, but we have actually been informed that 2 more prizes have been added to the first place level. And I'm trying to get that out right now. It looks like, yes, it is a copy of the Ultimate Toolbox and the World's Largest Dungeon being given by one of their authors. And I believe one of them may actually be autographed. I'm not positive on that one.
Josh, do you know about the Ultimate Toolbox?
I have actually heard about it. I looked into it. I think I may have even gotten a PDF for it recently. It is a Game Master's Toolbox and player. I found it. There's a character background generator in it, which I think we might utilize. But it's got tons of tools in it, helping generate backgrounds, helping generate storylines, helping generate not necessarily bad guys. Maybe I don't know all the details yet, but it's like a 400-page toolbox. And then, of course, the World's Largest Dungeon. If you have not looked up the World's Largest Dungeon, it is one of the coolest books that AEG released during the 3.5 days. It is fully compatible with Pathfinder so long as you follow their little rules and so forth. And I'm telling you, it's a lot of fun. I've never, ever heard of anyone go all the way through it. And I remember hearing Dan making mention that he would love to go all the way through Undermountain and go all the way through World's Largest Dungeon, one of the two. And I think that'd be neat as well. So the first place person now will not only get their 1 for being in the top 5 and their 3 for being first place, they will also get those 2 as well. So thus we have 2 more prizes and you get roughly 2 more weeks. It's going to be, from what I understand, been pushed to November the 10th. The P.O. Box is on our website under the contest tab, which I believe should just be theestablishedfacts.com/contest. Has the rules and so forth on there. Get them in. Again, they have to be at the P.O. Box on November 10th. So that,
like 3 days before.
Yes, 2 to 3 days before. And if you're international, they should be in the mail when we're recording, which was a week ago. So you might want to get that taken care of.
I told these guys that I was going to hold off on an established fact because I usually give last week's established facts, and to be honest, I can't remember it. But we will get that plugged in there for you. But I want to establish a fact from this episode, and it just came to me literally as Donald was talking about all this stuff here at the end. In villains or heroes, it is determined by a background of many choices that they make. Whether they will be heroes or villains seen by the public. I know it's a small inside joke, but when it's necessary for bad things to happen to good characters, it is necessary for you to roll a D4 and a D10. Thanks. Have a great show.
Oh,
bye, guys.
Love Bill Kahn. Love you, wife.
Bonus.